If you do not, I promise you, all the world will know the truth about Edmund, son of Ethelred. How he...
Although Vikings Valhalla wrapped things up with its third season, everything about the way it ended makes you feel like a fourth season could easily happen. The whole show was always meant to expand on the legacy of Vikings, which had already built up 6 seasons of battles, alliances, betrayals, and exploration. When Valhalla came along, it wasn't just repeating what had already been done. Instead, it jumped into the final years of the Viking Age, with fresh characters who had their own goals, though their bloodline and culture tied them back to the Viking spirit that made the original series so memorable. That's how we got to know Leif Erikson, Freydís, Harald Sigurdsson, King Canute, and Emma of Normandy. Their stories kicked off thanks to the violent aftermath of the St. Brice's Day massacre, and from there, things only got bigger and more dramatic. After the second season, the stage was already set for more adventure. Harald and Leif found their way to Constantinople. Freydís became the leader of Jomsburg, and Emma managed to outplay Godwin after he orchestrated an attempt on her life. Season 3 then jumped ahead 7 years, showing us how much the characters had grown and how much was still unresolved. It may have been billed as the final season, but it still felt like a stepping stone towards something more. That's why many fans believe that even though Season 4 isn't officially happening, the material is there and could easily be used to continue the story if the chance ever came. Take Harald Hardrada, for example. His entire arc from the very start was about becoming the King of Norway. His half-brother Olaf was his biggest obstacle, but when Freydís killed Olaf, Harald's path cleared up. He needed resources and support, which led him on a journey of battles, escapes, and survival, including his time in Constantinople, where he barely made it out alive. By the end of Season 3, Harald wasn't just another warrior chasing glory. He officially claimed the throne, imprisoning his nephew Magnus and declaring himself Harald Hardrada, the Hard Ruler. History remembers him as a brutal king, and the show was setting him up to reflect that reputation. The third season hinted that Constantinople hardened him, and imprisoning his nephew was just the start of what could have been an even darker reign. A fourth season could have explored how far Harald was willing to go in his ruthless rule, which is exactly the kind of storyline fans would want to see. Now, Magnus himself was another character left in limbo. His mission was partly about honoring his father Olaf, but also about taking the throne. For a moment, he and Harald were supposed to rule together, but that alliance crumbled fast. Once Magnus found out Harald had helped Freydís escape, he confronted him, which only led to his imprisonment. Historically, Magnus co-ruled with Harald for less than a year before dying, but in Valhalla, that wasn't resolved. A fourth season could have shown whether Magnus found a way to escape, struck back at Harald, or was executed so that Harald could rule alone. Knowing Magnus's persistence, it's easy to imagine him scheming for revenge. England's throne politics also created plenty of room for more story. Emma of Normandy had already proven herself as one of the sharpest minds in the series. When Canute died, his sons, Emma's sons, and others like Harald Harefoot and Harthacnut all came into play. Edward and Harald Harefoot even fought to show who was stronger, but that didn't solve anything. Canute ultimately divided power in a way that kept everyone somewhat satisfied. Sven stayed King of Norway. Harthacnut took Denmark with Harefoot as regent. Emma kept England, and her sons returned to Normandy. But once Canute was gone, the balance didn't hold. Godwin, always scheming, tried to control the situation by bringing Harefoot to Emma. His plan was for Harefoot to gain the throne with his guidance. What Godwin didn't predict was Harefoot warming up to Emma instead, possibly even romantically. A fourth season could have played out this surprising alliance and whether Harefoot's rise pushed Emma out of England like in history. It had all the makings of a tense political drama. Speaking of Godwin, he's the kind of character who doesn't just disappear after one failed plan. His ambition was for his son to one day be king, and he had already proven he'd go to extremes, even arranging assassination attempts to secure his position. At the end of Season 3, his plan hadn't worked out exactly as he wanted, but that wouldn't have stopped him. If a fourth season happened, we would have seen him pushing Harefoot further, manipulating the court and trying to outwit Emma. His rivalry with her had already been established as one of the most compelling threads of the show, and it deserved more time to play out. Then there's William, Duke of Normandy. He only showed up briefly in Season 3, but anyone who knows history knows how important he becomes. Introduced as a young orphan under the control of his uncle, William was on the verge of stepping into his role as Duke when he turned 15. In one scene, he made a pact with Edward and Alfred that they would all take what was theirs, setting him up as a future key player. Of course, we know that in real life, William became William the Conqueror, King of England after the Battle of Hastings. A fourth season could have started planting the seeds for that legendary rise, making his appearances in Season 3 feel even more significant. Freydís' storyline also left a bunch of unanswered questions. With Stigr, her new partner, and their son Harald Jr., she had a personal journey tied to Jomsburg and Greenland. Eric the Red, her father, tried to sabotage her and even handed Harald Jr. over to strangers far away. Stigr found the boy but was badly wounded in the process. A fourth season could have revealed whether Stigr survived and whether Freydís reunited with them before sailing to the Golden Land. That land, of course, was Vinland, what we now know as America. Leif's arc was heading there too. His dream of reaching Vinland had been building since Season 1, and by the end of Season 3, he finally set sail with Freydís. That journey tied into real history, since Leif Erikson is remembered as the first European to set foot on continental America. The main Viking series had earlier suggested Floki made it there, so a fourth season could have addressed that contradiction and given Leif the recognition he deserved. Imagine the possibilities of exploring their settlement in Vinland, the challenges they faced, and how Freydís hoped it could become a new home for the Jomsvikings. Freydís' promise to return for Stigr, Harald Jr., and the Jomsvikings was another storyline begging for resolution. She wasn't the kind of character to abandon her people, so it's likely she would have gone back for them, even if that meant confronting Eric the Red again. Eric himself was revealed to be dangerous and cruel, even willing to fight his own daughter. A fourth season would have needed to settle that conflict, showing whether the Greenlanders finally turned against him and chose to follow Freydís instead. When you look at all these threads, Harald's ruthless reign, Magnus's uncertain fate, Emma's power struggles, Godwin's ongoing schemes, William's future, and Leif and Freydís' journey to Vinland, it's impossible not to see the setup for another season. Season 3 didn't close doors, it opened them. And while the creators explained that it made sense to stop after 3, the material clearly left space for more. That's why the idea of a fourth season is so exciting. Even though it's not officially happening, the stories feel alive enough that fans can imagine what comes next. The show gave us a bunch of new characters who carried the Viking legacy in different ways, and their journeys don't feel finished. If Valhalla ever returned, it already has a roadmap of where to go. The ruthless reign of Harald Hardrada, the rise of William the Conqueror, the adventures in Vinland, and the unfinished battles of Emma, Godwin, and Freydís. So even though Vikings Valhalla was planned to end with its third season, it still feels like a springboard for more. The fourth season might not be on the schedule, but it's there in spirit, waiting in the stories that were already set in motion. And that's something to be positive about, because it means the Viking Age isn't really over. It lives on in the characters and in the possibilities for their futures, whether the show comes back or fans keep the story alive in their imagination. Well, that's it for today. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel, because we'll be covering more updates on this soon, and other exciting upcoming movies and series. We'll see you next time.